Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Oh, interaction, fantastic. So my name's Peter Wadsworth, and I have had the honour of studying Strawberry's history for the last 30 to 40 years, and I'd like to welcome you to Stockport Art Gallery for an event that is part of a year-long programme where Stockport is the Greater Manchester Town of Culture. I'd like to thank Stockport Council for firstly getting that programme going, but for supporting this event, and I'd particularly like to thank Peter Ashworth, who has helped put this evening on, and of course all the gallery and museum staff who have helped make sure that this happens tonight. So thank you, everyone. Now, Stockport is, of course, a town with great cultural roots, lots of them musical. If you think of the bands that have come from Stockport, and even today, Blossoms, of course, who have made Stockport their hometown. But for me, the cultural roots of this town is grounded in the fact that it was home to so many, and is still home to so many, recording studios. So Revolution, Hologram, Cavalier, Pluto, Yellow 2, Moulin Rouge. Today we've got South City, and of course back in the day we had Strawberry Recording Studios, which was started in 1967 by someone who's with us here this evening on the front row, Mr. Peter Tattersall. I think a round of applause for Peter. He's telling me off for saying his name, but he loves it, really. So Strawberry, of course, went on to provide 26 years of recording facilities to a wide range of stars, including one of the greatest bands of all time, 10cc, which is why when you see the plaque on the side of the Strawberry building, it says home to 10cc. Now, back in 1968, when Peter started Intercity, as it was then, he needed financial support to help him. And eventually he could turn to the Manchester-based Kennedy Street company who invested. But before he could do that, he turned to people he knew to help him financially support Strawberry. The first of which was Eric Stewart, who was in a band called the Mindbenders. Do you all remember A Groovy Kind of Love? Not the Phil Collins version. And Eric invested into Strawberry, but Peter soon realised that that money wasn't enough and he needed more. So he turned to a young singer-songwriter who had shot to international fame with a string of hits for some of the biggest names in the industry. And it's a real honour to welcome that singer-songwriter back here tonight, back to Stockport. Now, if I were to tell you that he was just a partner in and a director of Strawberry, that would make him a hero in my eyes. But when I add in that he was a quarter of one of the biggest bands this country has ever produced, that elevates him further. And if I add to that that he co-wrote one of the greatest pop songs of all time and recorded it in Stockport, then that to me means he is a legend of British pop music. So I'd like you to welcome back home to Stockport, Mr. Graham Gouldman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a lovely welcome. Thank you.
Well, I know you'll be used to ovations and applause all around the world, but that ovation is a special Stockport one, just to say thank you for all you've done for this town over the years.
How lovely.
And this town respects everything you've done for it. You may have done it unintentionally, but...
Well, I'd like to say that, this town is we should thank the town, because Strawberry was such an important part of our lives. And it's lovely to be back, by the way.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And just so everyone knows what's happening, including me, the evening is split into two. So we're going to have two parts. At the end of each part, Graham is going to perform a song of his choosing. So it'll be a surprise to all of us to find out what he's chosen. We'll have a short break in between the two parts. I say break, and for those of us of a certain age, it means a toilet break. But the first part, we're going to follow Graham's career, find out about your early life, and we're going to leave you at the break dangling in Stockport.
You leave me dangling in Stockport, okay. I look forward to that.
The second part, we're going to go kind of more in depth into your time with 10cc and beyond.
Okay.
So, looking back, you were born, no surprise, in May 1946.
Correct.
And you grew up in the Broughton Park area of Salford.
Yeah.
Now, when I Googled that, I also found out that people such as Ewan McColl, Elkie Brooks,
Yep.
Mark E. Smith, John Cooper Clarke, Peter Hook, Bernard Sumner, all of them came from the same kind of area. So there must be something about that area.
Something in the water.
Something, or the air, one of the two.
Well, yes, actually, I lived on the same road as Elkie Brooks.
Okay.
And her brother Tony played in with Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. So I don't know what it is about areas, but obviously it was very creative somehow.
Definitely. And looking back at your childhood, what memories exist today of that time?
Well, a very happy childhood. And where I used to live, I had lots of friends. I'm an only child, but I was lucky in the area that I lived. There were lots of other kids, and we used to play out till all hours and go out on our bikes. And it was behind where we lived, there was this kind of, to me, it looked like a forest. It was probably just a little field or something. But we used to play there. And it was very happy memories of living in Cavendish Road, it was called. And then we moved to a flat off Bury New Road. And that was really important to me creatively, because I really started getting into the creative side of making, writing songs. And a lot of things happened at that flat and was created at that flat as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've got my memories of Manchester, I always loved coming up here because my roots are here and always will be. So even though I've lived in London for many years, but I do love coming up. Always feels warm.
Good.
Even if it's cold.
This is mild.
Yeah.
But there comes that certain point, and I've just written Peter's life story, and he was telling me how that certain point you reach where music becomes a big part of your life. So who were your influences? What were you listening to back then?
Well, my influences are everyone I've met that's either a songwriter or a musician that's around the same age, all has the same influences. And those are pretty much the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and maybe beyond, but that was the era where we were listening to a lot of American music. So that was the sort of the start of it for me. And then came the skiffle era, which was very important. And I don't think enough people talk about that, where what was important about that was where this was when people were making their own music, like you could pick up a guitar even if you couldn't play it. You'd sort of just got together with some mates and made a noise. But there was a kind of a joy in that. And I think a lot of us got sort of infected in the nicest possible way through that. Then there was Cliff and the Shadows, very important as well. And then the most important thing happened, which was the Beatles. And that was when I felt my sort of, they went into my bloodstream, and they're still there. And they still inform everything I do today, and a lot of my contemporaries feel that exactly the same way.
Okay. Now, I believe you started on the drums rather than the guitar. Would that be right?
I did, yes. I wanted to be a drummer. I was always fascinated by the drums and still am. But the good Lord, in his infinite wisdom, decided it wasn't going to happen. So I did try, but there was nothing happening. But when I was 11, my cousin Ronnie bought me back a guitar from Spain, and it was a terrible thing, but I absolutely fell in love with it. And just the feel of it and had a big effect on me. And that's really was a turning point for me. Although, I mean, I've been aware of music and fell in love with music when I was about 7. And because I wanted to play the drums, my mum had a handbag with a kind of serrated surface, and I used to get a clothes brush and sort of go, try and make drums out of that. But anyway, it wasn't to be, but thank God for the guitar.
And it was around then you would have started forming bands, being in bands,
yeah.
And I'm guessing the Whirlwinds.
Yeah, there were a few bands before. There was a band called the Cravats, the High Spots, but the Whirlwinds we were kind of like very much influenced by Cliff and the Shadows. You know, we wore suits, we had Fender Stratocasters. That was the guitar to have. And we started playing in a lot of the working men's clubs in and around Manchester, sometimes doing 2 or 3 shows a night. And it was a great education, really, to the discipline of it, the trying to make music and enjoying music, playing with the other guys in the band. Eventually, it was very cabaret orientated, and it was a bit too sophisticated for me. So I eventually left the band, but took 2 of the boys with me and nicked Kevin Godley from another band, because we used to rehearse in a place called the Jewish Lads Brigade, which was in North Manchester. And they were kind enough to let us rehearse in their rooms, and in exchange for us playing at some of their social events. And I always remember sort of putting my head around the door and listening to Kevin was in a band, I think it was called the Sabres. I won't swear to that. But anyway, and I always thought, God, he's a fantastic drummer. And anyway, I left with the very aptly named Bernard Basso, who was our bass player, and Stephen Jacobson, whose brother is Howard Jacobson. I don't know if you're familiar with Howard, very well-known author. And we formed the Mockingbirds. And that was really when I started writing songs, and we did lots of cover versions, but like weird stuff we did. And it was a great band, I think, but we never actually, nothing ever happened.
I believe the Mockingbirds were a warm-up band for Top of the Pops.
Yeah, Top of the Pops used to come from Dickinson Road, I think it was, and because it took time, to get the lights set up and the sound and everything, they used to have warm-up bands, and the Mockingbirds did it a couple of times. And one of the times, the Yardbirds were on playing, and they were doing For Your Love, which was my song. So that was kind of weird, but very nice. I thought it was great.
You had to stand there and listen to them playing your song.
Yeah, I had to.
But not as good as you played it.
Oh, I don't know. I love what they did with the song.
Yeah.
They really did it great.
Other stories I've heard of the Mockingbirds, you being mobbed at Lewis's in Manchester.
Yeah, Lewis's. Blimey. It's like, it's kind of like the Manchester Selfridges or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, we did a gig there, I remember. I suppose it was the first time we were aware of, some kind of fame, I don't know. But it was it was good times, really. A great learning curve, doing all these different sorts of gigs, going into working men's clubs, sometimes appearing with like comedians, magicians, strippers sometimes. It was like amazing. It was very different. But we did it.
Peter does tell a story, which will be in the book,
Okay.
of appearing with strippers. So it's, when he was a young lad. So
Should we have a talk? Okay. Oh, I look forward to that.
So you've started writing songs for the Mockingbirds.
Yes.
Is that your first kind of foray into songwriting?
Yeah, I'd sort of dabbled a bit, but really it was the Beatles who inspired me to like really do it. And I mean, me and billions of other people were going, well, if, you know, we want to be in the Beatles, or we want to be the Beatles. And I did actually slightly achieve a bit of that much later on.
Yeah, we'll come to that. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, so they were a big inspiration to everybody, because suddenly that, rather than having to go down to a publisher in London and ask for a song, people, you know, we'd actually did that once, and no one wanted to know why would they give an unknown band a song. That really, you know, sort of pushed me to write my own songs.
And this is whilst you're also working during the day at a gents outfitters?
Yeah, gents outfitters in Salford called Bargains Unlimited. Yeah, I've actually still got a bag with a lyric on it. Unfortunately, it's not a famous song, but it's a nice thing to have. Yeah, I worked there for 2 years, was working with the Mockingbirds, leaving earlier to go and do gigs, coming in later the next day because we'd driven miles, and I sort of overslept. I eventually got the sack, which was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Tell me a little bit about your dad's influence on your songwriting.
Oh, yeah, massive. I was lucky enough, actually, my dad was a writer. He should have been a professional writer. When people say, what did your dad do? I say he was a writer. He was very creative. He couldn't afford to be a professional writer, but he was very involved in amateur dramatics, and I hate using the word amateur next to his name, because what he did, the plays that he wrote, the stories he wrote were amazing. So I would write a lyric and I'd show it to him and he'd say, I can make this better. And he did. And not only that, like one of the classic tales I tell about him is, I came home one day and he said, I'd given him an idea for a song called Bus Stop. And I came home one day and he showed me a lyric, and it was, bus stop, wet day, she's there, I say, please share my umbrella. And I looked at the song and I heard the melody, and it was like a trigger. It was fantastic. And then I wrote the next part of the song in my head, which is quite unusual because normally I'm up with a guitar. But it does happen sometimes. It's like a small miracle. So not only did he help me with lyrics, write lyrics, but he also, like art for art's sake, he used to say that to me, art for art's sake, money for God's sake, which was kind of quite a cynical thing to say. And he wasn't a cynical man at all, but it was it's such a funny thing. It's such a nice phrase. Mm. And of course that became a 10cc song.
I've heard you say since you would have quite liked it if perhaps some of the records had actually said Gouldman and Gouldman on the songwriting credit.
There was a kind of a tacit agreement that it would just have my name on it. Mm. And it could have done, yes. Or his name was directly over my name. Yeah. Yeah, it would have been nice.
I also believe you played Bus Stop. When the Hollies took on the song, you actually played it to Graham Nash in the Top of the Pops toilet.
It wasn't in the Top of the Pops toilet. It was in the toilet at Stockport Town Hall. Oh, okay. Quite a different toilet, I may say. I think we must have been supporting them, and they said, "Have you got any songs?" Because they've already recorded "Look Through Any Window," and we went to the smallest, quietest room in the place. And that's what I remember, playing it on Tony Hicks's 12-string Vox guitar. And they said, that's great, I'll do a demo of it. And I did. And in those days, things happened really quickly. It was like they recorded it, it came out 3 weeks later. Whereas later on, even during the 10cc era, there started to be, artwork and things that slowed things down. We still had success, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that in those days things happened really, really quickly.
Yeah. Talking of your songwriting, I've just written down some of your songs here, and this is only scratching the surface. Heart Full of Soul, Yardbirds, Look Through Any Window, Hollies, Evil-Hearted You, Yardbirds, Getting Nowhere, Friday Brown.
Yeah.
Listen People, Herman's Hermits. We've mentioned Bus Stop. My favourite, No Milk Today, Herman's Hermits. Pamela, Pamela, Wayne Fontana. East West, Herman's Hermits. Behind the Door, which was recorded by Cher.
Yeah.
Tallyman, Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
Naughty Nippon Nights.
The Shadows.
The Shadows. On YouTube, there is actually a clip of the BBC playing that, and the DJ says, written by the Shadows themselves.
Wow.
I know, yeah. I think you want to have a word. But I mean, that is scratching the surface. So the songwriting is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
The kind of output, that was 3 years worth. That's just 3 years.
Yeah, I had a very hot period, actually.
Yeah, so...
Do you want me to sing a bit of one of your...
Go on, yeah,
Go on then. That's a good cue, actually, isn't it? I'll sing the song that is your favourite, Peter. And for some reason, this has got incredibly tangled up, but never mind. Okay. It was No Milk Today, wasn't it?
No Milk Today, yeah.
Okay. Can I tell you a brief story about that title?
Yeah.
Some of you have heard this a billion times, haven't you? But my dad came home one day and he said, I've got a great idea for a song, No Milk Today. He said, I went to see visit one of my friends, and he wasn't in the friend, and as he turned on the doorstep, he noticed the empty milk bottle with the No Milk Today little note in it. He came back to me and said, what about No Milk Today? I said, that's a terrible idea. He said, you're missing the point. It's nothing to do with the fact that people don't want any milk that day. It's what the empty milk bottle symbolises, that love's left the house. So I'll sing you a bit of it. No milk today, my love has gone away. The bottle stands forlorn, a symbol of the dawn. No milk today, it seems a common sight, but people passing by don't know the reason why. How could they know just what this message means? The end of my hope, the end of all my dreams. How could they know a palace they had been behind the door when my love reigned was queen? No milk today, it wasn't always so. The company was gay, we turned night into day. As music played, the faster did we dance. We felt it both at once, the start of our romance. How could they know just what this message means? The end of my hope, the end of all my dreams. How could they know a palace they have been behind the door when my love reigned as queen? No milk today, my love has gone away. The bottle stands forlorn, a symbol of the dawn. But all that's left is a place dark and lonely, a terrace house in a retreat back of town. Becomes a shrine when I think of you only, just two up, two down. No milk today.
But here's a really awkward question for you.
Go on.
You had all these hits by all these artists, but you could never write a hit that your own bands did. Can you explain why? Do you know why?
I had no idea why. I mean, we recorded a song called Schoolgirl, but it was really good. In fact, the Hollies did a recording and then sort of it was never released. I've no idea why. It was just one of those things. That's it.
It doesn't matter why. The songs are still out there. So
Yeah, I mean, things would have been very different, you know.
Yeah.
There wouldn't have been any 10cc possibly.
Well, that's a good job they weren't a success.
Yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't be here.
I'm going to bring you dragging and screaming into Stockport in a minute, but before we do,
Yeah.
you had a brief spell writing for, producing, and then actually joining the Mindbenders
Yes.
in 1968.
Yeah.
It was right at the end of the Mindbenders' life.
Yes, I was. Yes.
Did you take
the final nail in the coffin?
Did you take anything from that experience?
Yeah. Well, one of the main things was building up a relationship with Eric Stewart, who I'd met at our agent's office. Our agents were Kennedy Street Enterprises, and actually, so they still are for our UK tours. Yeah, I met Eric there, and we got on, and he asked me to. It's a bit vague, but I know we did. We did about. I think it lasted for about 6 months. We did a tour with the Small Faces and the Who. I remember that was amazing, but it wasn't. You know, I think it just wasn't working out, and it kind of folded, and that would have been sort of 60, I guess 68 maybe.
68.
It was 68. Yeah. So just prior to the studios starting, Intercity and then Strawberry.
And in the same year, you released your own solo album, the Graham Gouldman thing.
Yeah, I think wasn't that in 69.
Okay. Probably recording in 68.
Yeah, probably recorded in 68. Yeah, that was great to do that. I was signed to RCA Records. And the idea was that Peter Noon from Herman's Hermits was going to produce the album. I have no idea where that idea came from. But I think it was more like the artist producing the songwriter, because I'd written No Milk Today for Herman's Hermits. And I'd recorded some other songs of mine. But anyway, it didn't turn up. But I was working with John Paul Jones, who eventually went on to become a member of Led Zeppelin. But John and I had done lots of recording sessions together, doing demos, and he asked him to do all the arrangements. And the arrangements are fantastic on that record. So it was really me and John and Eddie Kramer, who's a very famous engineer, who made the album. Recorded at Olympic Studios, which is no more, but another very famous studio. Not as good as Strawberry.
I was going to bring in the fact that you would have recorded at quite a few London studios. I'm wondering what you took from recording in those studios that you perhaps learnt to do or not to do.
Well, I was never really a sort of a bit of a technophobe. Although I have got a studio at home now, but lucky, I suppose, to be working with Eric, because he had the skill, the engineering skills, knew all about the equipment, had a fantastic ear as well. So really, that side of it. I mean, I became a partner in the studio, but I wasn't about to advise on what speakers to get. Leave that to people who knew, like Peter Tattersall here and Eric.
So you would have been aware that Peter had started Intercity above Neildon Hardy. Do you all remember Neildon Hardy's in Stockport? Those of you from Stockport. Yeah. And I wonder what your thoughts were when you kind of found out that there was a studio starting up in Stockport.
Delighted, because there were some studios, but really if you wanted to make anything decent, you had to go down to London. So this was an absolutely brilliant idea. And that's why I was very happy to become a partner in it. And he's very lucky in all ways, from the fruits of that, that idea of starting a studio up here was brilliant.
Good. We're glad you invested into it. Neildon Hardy's, the music store, with Intercity above it. one of the best stories that Peter tells is Barclay James Harvest recording, and they were very much used the mellotron to get their sound, but that was too heavy to get up to the studio on the first floor, so they had to put it in the shop window and run the cables up, so all the passers-by would have just watched. I don't know which member of Barclay James Harvest did, but, just a nice little story that will be in Peter's book. He would tell me that.
That's great.
So, as you've said, Peter and Eric asked if you would invest into City. We think, we're not quite sure, but we think you invested before it moved from Neildon Hardy's to Waterloo Road.
If I wouldn't remember, but if you think so, Peter.
So when you invested, because it wasn't an insubstantial amount of money you invested into it.
I don't even remember what it was.
I think it was about £2,000,
wow,
which in those days. Eric only invested 800, but I'm not going to say that.
Right.
So,
now you tell me.
What would success look like to you investing that money? What would you have wanted it to have done?
Just to have, well, initially to have a place for bands, because there were so many absolutely brilliant bands in and around Manchester, Stockport, or, you know, the whole area, for somewhere for them to record in a proper studio. That was the main thing about it. And also places where we could go. I mean, what eventually grew into 10cc wasn't 10cc at the beginning. Of course, we all had our, you know, different things, and we all brought different things to the table. But you were talking a bit before about working in America with the Casnet's Cats, who were famous for bubblegum music, which is about the opposite to what I was doing. But I think that the idea was that they wanted to sort of up their game a bit and get into more sort of classic sort of songwriting type, make more classic sort of pop records rather than bubblegum. And I went to New York. I stayed there for a few months, got fed up with it. But I said, I'm involved in I'm a partner in a studio. What I'd like to do is bring all the songs that I've done here back. And I'd already started working with Kevin, Lyle and Eric, and actually record them at the studio. So I guess that in a way, even though it wasn't a very happy experience for me artistically, it was one of the things that brought the band that would eventually become 10cc together. So I'm grateful for it, for that, really. That was a good thing.
When you were working for Casnet's Cats, I presume you were just sitting in an office churning out songs?
It was pretty much churning stuff out. Yeah, but I didn't really... I could... You know, I go to Nashville quite a lot, and you do like 3-hour sessions, and I quite like that. I like the sort of pressure of it. But I think the actual music that they were looking for didn't feel right. But as I say, you know, who knows, one thing leads to another, and I'm grateful for that time.
You've heard Kevin's quote about the songs that were being recorded then.
Can you repeat it?
Well, there's no swear words in it. The wax cringed when those records were made, he says.
I've never heard that. Yes.
But as you said, it had other knock-on effects.
It had a great knock-on effect, so I can't knock it.
And if you've never heard any of those songs, there is a great CD out called Strawberry Bubblegum.
Yeah.
Collection of pre-10cc Strawberry studio recordings. If you see it, I'm not sure it's still available, but
Don't
if you
do
see
it.
it secondhand, get it. It's got things like Ohio Express, Sausalito, Crazy Elephant.
Yeah,
Dr.
actually,
Father.
Sausalito was pretty good.
Yeah, it's good songs.
Yeah.
Silver Fleet, Come On Plane.
Come On Plane, yeah. So we were... The thing with Casnet's Cats were they just got session musicians in and just put some good-looking blokes out on the TV shows to promote them.
But as you say, for Strawberry, those sessions allowed Peter to invest.
It was business, you know. It brought business to the studio, and it brought the band together. Yeah, so...
Yeah. So we're going to leave it hanging there for part 2.
Right.
And we'll talk more about the later developments. But would you like to finish this part with a song for us?
Yeah. Why don't I? I mean, I've come all this way. I might.
You might.
Okay, I'm going to sing a bit of quite an important song for me. I'm often asked, like, what's your favourite song that you've written? When I was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2014, and if you're a writer-performer, they ask you to sing one song. So you've got to pick one song out of your catalogue. So anyway, I'm going to sing you the song that I sang there, which was Bus Stop by the Hollies. Bus stop when day she's there, I'd say, please share my umbrella. Bus stops must go, she stays, love grows under my umbrella. All that summer we enjoyed it, wind and rain and shine. That umbrella we employed it, by all that she was mine. Every morning I would see her waiting at the stop. Sometimes she'd shop and she would show me what she bought. All the people stared as if we were both quite insane. Someday my name and hers are going to be the same. That's the way the whole thing started, silly but it's true. Thinking of a sweet romance beginning in a queue. Came the sun, the ice was melting, no more sheltering now. Nice to think that that umbrella led me to a vow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a 20 minutes break, toilet break for some of us. If we can make it 20 minutes, and then we'll reconvene, and we're going to explore some of the greatest years this town has ever seen. I'll say that boldly, and I think it's true. So, we'll see you in 20 minutes. Clapping me, thanks. Okay, thank you. We've actually worked out that we think this is the only time that Graham has performed in Stockport, other than in a recording studio, obviously. So, so, welcome back, everyone. And we left you in Stockport, in the newly created Strawberry Studios, and you're working for Castanet's Cats, and you're bringing them back over to Stockport to record the songs that you've written. And I'm guessing it's whilst you are in America, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that with the money that's been made, Strawberry upgrades its equipment. And Eric, Kevin and Lol, with nothing better to do, testing the equipment, put together a song that actually gets released as a single called Neanderthal Man. Were you around when that was being recorded, or were you over in America?
No, I was in America, I think. I came back and I heard the story that that they were testing equipment, and someone from Philips Records,
Dick Leahy,
happened to be in the studio. It's like one of these magic fairy tale stories. Was in the studio on Other Business, I think, and he heard this coming out of the control room and said, like, what the hell is that? It's a smash. People used to say that in those days. And he was right, it was,
Well,
yeah.
Number 2 in the charts.
Yeah.
So, since you weren't involved in it, what did you actually think of it as a song, Neanderthal
I
Man?
thought it was great. I really liked it. It's very inventive. I mean, there are elements to it that you can hear in later 10cc records. But I thought it was great, and it was good for the studio. And I eventually went on the road with Hot Legs. We did a tour with the Moody Blues, and we only did a few dates, I think.
Well, the story was that a member of the Moody Blues got sick.
Right.
But I was told the real reason was that Hot Legs blew the Moody Blues off stage, really, with their musical skills. You obviously don't want to comment on that.
I couldn't possibly comment.
But
I'm not sure about that, seriously.
I was told that Hot Legs were
exceptionally
good.
No, obviously. But
with your audition,
yeah,
obviously.
I don't know whether someone got sick because of we were so brilliant.
Well, we'll stick to that story for now until the Moody Blues tell us otherwise.
Okay.
So, before we move on to a couple of very notable occasions, I just want to do a little sidetrack down a cul-de-sac called Sporting Records.
Oh yes.
TriStar Airbus.
Strictly business.
TriStar Airbus, Willie Morgan.
Yep.
Everton Football Club.
Yeah.
Manchester City, Boys in Blue. In fact, the Everton and Manchester City song still played.
Yeah, my dad wasn't happy with that.
Manchester United fan, I presume.
Yeah.
Although United did record at Strawberry in later years.
Yeah.
Leeds, Sunderland, Lancashire Cricket Club, all these sporting people coming to Strawberry. Was that deliberate or was it just coincidental?
No, just coincidental, I think. We were the studio to go to. So if a team wanted to make a record, they'd come to Strawberry rather than going down to London. Got a fantastic studio on their doorstep.
There is some great footage of you and Eric and Kevin and Lowell guiding Manchester City players through their paces in the studio. A bit tongue-in-cheek, I think, but it's great footage.
Yeah.
And I think you can find it on YouTube if you want to have a look at that. So, Hot Legs obviously happened and you toured with Hot Legs.
Yeah.
Before we get to 10cc, I think there's 2 events that helped solidify 10cc as a band. The first one, a gentleman called Barrington Frost and his wife Dorothy, who turned up at Strawberry. He was a central heating salesman from Sheffield.
Yeah.
But he believed he was a reincarnated Egyptian pharaoh called Ramesses.
That's right.
As you do.
Yeah.
And Dorothy became Selket. So
Correct.
Ramesses and Selket in Strawberry, I think through association with Harvey Lisberg.
Yes,
I think
that's
managing
how that
them.
came about. Yeah.
But it was the embryonic 10cc who helped Ramesses put together
Space Hymns.
Space Hymns, yeah.
Yeah, and quite a extraordinary album, I think. He was I remember he came round to my flat with Kevin and Lowell were there, and Ramesses and Selkut talked to us about Egyptology and their reincarnation and everything, and they were absolutely mesmerizing. There was something about them. And he'd written these songs and we recorded them, and we did it in maybe a couple of weeks, if that. I remember sort of sitting on the floor, like it was very sort of hippy-dippy in those days. I played the album not that long ago, and there were some really lovely things on it. Mm. And of course, the album cover is quite iconic. It's a gatefold showing a church that's in Stockport,
St. George's.
St. George's, taking off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roger Dean. Yeah.
Roger Dean did it. Yeah, I met Roger Dean about 2 months ago.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So Stockport is immortalised on the cover of and a great album, as Graham says.
It is.
And I think Kevin has since said that allowed you to kind of tap into a kind of almost creative wacky side that would serve
Yeah.
the four of you well in coming years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Making that album, I mean, there are a few sort of stepping stones that prior to us forming 10cc. That's certainly one of them, an important one.
And funnily enough, for Peter's book, he's telling me stories about having to get inside cardboard boxes naked to record. That's okay. It's going in the book, so. But obviously strange sessions. But the total opposite of that now, for the next thing that I think helps form 10cc, and that's an American singer-songwriter who had rather faded from view since the 50s and 60s, and that was Neil Sedaka, who ended up recording 2 albums with you.
Yeah, the Tralla Days Are Over and Solitaire, and they were an absolute joy to record.
What did you learn from him, working with him?
He was very, very professional. We would record, because this is old school recording, where there's just like 2-track, he would, although I think we had 8-track then, but we'd go in the studio, there'd be Kevin would play drums, me and Lol would play usually acoustic guitars, and Neil would play the piano and sing the lead vocal. And then we'd do our overdubs afterwards, backing vocals, I put a bass on, other guitars, whatever, and Eric would engineer it. And that way of recording, the immediacy of it was beautiful. And people don't really do that now because we don't have to. So we've lost that art to some extent. I'm very aware of it myself, of I'm all about performance and feel, and rather than perfection.
And the story goes that when he first came, you weren't 10cc.
No.
You were on the verge of.
Yeah.
By the time you did the Solitaire.
We were 10cc. We'd had, I think Donna had been a hit.
Yeah. So there is the story that as a result of that first album, when you were just session musicians, that spurred you to go for a Chinese restaurant somewhere and decide that you should be doing something for yourself.
There was a discussion at some point that why it hadn't occurred to us earlier, but we, as you say, we were kind of like the house band at the studio, and we sort of did tracks and sort of messed around for our own pleasure, really. Some of which those tracks ended up on our first eponymously titled album. But yeah, there was a discussion. It was like, well, we could do this. You know, we'd played enough together and it worked. There was a good chemistry between us then. And yeah, we did it.
And obviously that led to 10cc.
Yeah.
I could spoil everybody's question in the room when we go to audience questions about the name 10cc.
Yeah.
If I ask it now, nobody else can ask it later. But
they all know.
They all think they know.
Well, I bet they do know.
So obviously it came in a dream to Jonathan King.
It came in a dream to Jonathan King.
That's right.
Standing in front of the Hammersmith Odeon, and it said 10cc, the best band in the world.
There you are. So nobody needs to ask that.
And when he said that, we all accepted it. It was like, there was no discussion.
Good. No mention of anything else. That's good.
Not then.
Do you think there was any danger? So we'd had Hot Legs, we'd had all the Casanets Cats one-off songs. Do you think there was any danger that 10cc could have ended up being another one-hit wonder, or was there more substance to it, do you think?
There was too much talent in the band for that to happen.
Definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. And your first appearance on Top of the Pops, when other bands were appearing in their exotic makeup and outrageous clothes.
Yeah.
And the story goes that you just decided you were going on in your T-shirts and jeans.
Well, yeah, denim shirts and denim jeans. And Tony Blackburn famously said, "That's a great gimmick." It was actually a non-gimmick. It was not a gimmick, because everyone else was in sort of sequined high heels. And some of the girls were in high heels as well.
And there was a suggestion, I believe, of hot pants, kind of polythene hot pants or something. No, okay.
Not that
reached your ears anyway. No. Okay. But I like that, because
That sounds like Kevin.
I like the kind of northernness of that kind of approach, because
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I went into studying Strawberry's history was there was this horrible school of thought that said between the 60s and the punk coming in the late 70s, there was no northern spirit in Manchester music, and it just annoyed me so much, because that's exactly what you were doing in Strawberry and on things like Top of the Pops, just being ordinary northern people, which I think is fantastic. What do you think the importance was for those 4 years of 10cc of being in Stockport?
I think it, first of all, meant that you didn't have to be in London to make it. I mean, we commuted. We eventually, some of us relented. I was the last one to actually move down south. And that was much later on. Yeah, it gave to the north of England, I'll say the north of England, a facility as good as anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
As simple as that. And, things came on from that. All the great records that were made there, not just by 10cc. So it was a fantastic thing.
I'm going to throw a couple of quotes at you. One from Kevin, who says, "I guess you could say we are just 4 voyeurs from Stockport." Voyeurs from Stockport. And then a more serious quote, which is actually from you, and this was in The Guardian in 1974. The Guardian actually visited Strawberry in 1974. "When the idea of the studio came up," said Graham, "people said, 'You're mad,' in Stockport, but we knew what it was like for people going into studios in London, the expense and so on, and there are no distractions in Stockport, no nightlife." No nightlife, so there's a good working atmosphere. You can just come into the studio, work, go back to your hotel, sleep, get up, and come back to work again.
Take your clogs off and your cloth cap and get down to it, lad. No. I suppose there was something of that element to it, that there wasn't, if we'd have gone down to London and been recording there, we might have been, we were young guys and in a band and blah, blah, blah. There might have been more distractions. No doubt about it that, 10cc wouldn't have existed for quite a few reasons, and one of them is the studio.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't just the kind of artistic creations that were happening, it was the area around the studio. So you had Waterloo across the road.
Yeah, there was a good pub, the Red Lion, I think it was, to have
and
good food there.
There were sandwich shops, there were takeaways, there was the Rhythm House music shop.
Yeah.
Not far. So the whole kind of area became, if you like, a kind of industry.
Yeah, but no nightclubs.
But no night. Well, no, that burned down across the road, unfortunately. Right. But so obviously all these things important. If we just look at each of the 10cc albums, the first one, as you said, just simply named 10cc, recorded quite quickly, I think, at Jonathan King's insistence.
Well, it was, yes. In those days, they wanted it, because we'd had a hit record, they wanted to get the album out as quickly as possible. We did have, I mentioned this before, but we already did have a few tracks for that album. And then it was a matter of us going into a room, whether it was me and Eric or Kevin and Lol, or we mixed it up as well. And he wanted it quickly. We would write, and we'd come out and go the room, go, "We got one," and then we'd play it to the other boys. And what was great about it is that we adopted the song as if it was our own. And it was like, and we never rejected any songs that any of us had written. Nobody said, "I think the song's rubbish, I don't want to be involved in it." It was like, if you've written it and you think it's good enough, okay. However, may I suggest that we do this or change that? So we got very involved in it. And I think that was one of the elements that lasted for most of the 4 years or 4 albums that we did at Strawberry, that was a great benefit. I think we had a very good work ethic like that. It was very democratic, and it was right for a time. It was all for one and one for all.
And You helped co-write Rubber Bullets, obviously.
Yeah.
Was that your first British #1, or had you had?
I hadn't had a #1 officially. I'd had a few #2s. That doesn't sound right.
I led you into that nicely.
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did it feel to have a #1?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Okay.
wonderful. Kevin and Lowell had the song, but they needed a middle part to it, which I supplied, and some lyrics for the rest of it as well. Yeah, but I remember when Eric heard it, thought it was fantastic.
So first album obviously launches 10cc, hit singles, and then we move on to the second album, which is Sheet Music.
Yeah.
Notable particularly more for the fact that you are recording at the same time as Paul McCartney
Yeah.
has come to Strawberry to record with his brother Mike McGeer.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
What are your memories of recording in and around?
Fantastic. There's no doubt about it that McCartney's influence, just because of his presence every day in the studio, was affected us. And we hung out with him a lot, and he was charming, and the studio was completely full of gear. There was so much equipment in there, and it was brilliant. I mean, we used his Mellotron, and I think we used his drum kit on Wall Street Shuffle. And just having him around was fantastic, and definitely affected in a very good way the Sheet Music album.
So I think everyone 10cc wise who I've spoken to has said that is probably the kind of highlight of those 4 years. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's my favourite album. And in fact, we actually, with the 10cc band that I run now, we did a tour, it was a few years ago, where we did the whole of Sheet Music in the first half of the show. And it was amazing. It was, we played songs that we'd never played on stage before as well, ever, with the original band.
Right.
So it was great. And to go back into those songs and actually learn them, to play them live, was quite an experience.
And that's
great.
the tour where Kevin did a video of him singing, wasn't it?
Kevin, and we still use that. Kevin made a video of him singing Somewhere in Hollywood, which we show, and we play live to his video.
And when Paul McCartney was in Strawberry, there's a lovely story of an American gentleman ringing him up and saying, "Can I come and visit?" And it was Richard Carpenter. And he came with, "Can I bring my sister?"
Can I bring my sister,
"Can I bring my
Karen?"
sister? Yeah.
Yeah,
and they came along.
That's right. And we went to see them. We went to see the Carpenters in, I can't remember where, but yeah, that's true.
So Sheet Music, second album, then the third album, original soundtrack.
Yeah.
And you talked about how good songs could be made greater. One of the songs you co-wrote with Eric, of course, is "I'm Not in Love." Surely one of the greatest pop songs of all time, as proven by the amount of times it's been played. And I think that showed how 10cc could work so well, because a good song was made even better, wasn't it?
Yes, I mean, with all modesty, I think you have to have a great song will inspire great production ideas. And that is a classic example, because this idea of using, first of all, the idea of using a choir came about. And then it was well, how are we going to do it? And that whole thing of making these tape loops of each note and spinning them back into the multi-track and playing the board in the studio as if it was a musical instrument. What was great about it was, as we were doing it, we didn't know what was going to happen. Whereas if you said, well, let's do a voice, like all these voices, you could get it on some sort of sampler and hear it all now. But we were just starting. So with each voice, each tape loop, as it built up, it was like a wondrous thing.
Can you remember the final playback and what you thought at the end of it all? And
we were absolutely in love with it. And the curious thing is, we used to turn the lights off in the control room and lie on the floor and listen back to it. None of us, as far as I remember, ever said, we knew it was great, but nobody, I think, realised its commercial potential at all. To us, it was just a great, brilliant album track. But it was when we started playing it to the record company and family and friends, and everyone was going, "This is a smash."
Speaking of songwriting, so we've obviously go back to the 60s, the songs you were writing then. How do you think your songwriting changed with 10cc? I mean, obviously you're writing with other people, I understand
well, yes, it changes because if you're writing with someone else, whoever your partner is, somehow there's your own writing ability, there's theirs, and it brings out different things in each other, I think. And also you've got someone there that you might do something like just twiddling around, and even like when I tune up a guitar, sort of play a little thing, and someone could go, "What was that?" And let's work on that. They go, "Well, it's just testing the tuning on the guitar." So I really like that. I mean, that sort of thing can happen with the writing partnership, but that's a whole massive subject.
Oh, yeah, spend the whole evening doing that. I'm told, obviously I'm not a musician, especially with multi-track recording, that recording process could be quite boring at times, not always as exciting as perhaps people who aren't into music think. And you could relieve boredom in a number of ways. I'm told recreational substances, but Peter told me to say that one. So,
what are recreational substances? What does that mean?
No, I wasn't suggesting.
No, not you. No, definitely not. Correct.
One of the things that does help relieve boredom is humour.
Yeah.
And I've been told of lots of jokes that were played by 10cc in the studio, particularly on Peter.
Yeah.
And there was one, I believe, in particular, where you hid down in the basement, wired yourself through to the desk, and whilst he was engineering, I think it was Oscar, the band,
yes.
You would introduce bum notes and strange voices,
Yeah.
and really freaked him out, I believe. Yes, so...
that was the general idea. But actually, I think Kevin Law were the masters of it. They once bricked over the control room. You walked into the control room, it's all looks like it's bricked up. There was definitely some recreational substances. Eh? Was it that day?
I walked in.
God. He couldn't take it, could he? No.
There is photographic proof of that as well. So, but yeah.
Yes.
Now, so humour obviously in your songs as well. A nice element of humour, which went into Wax as well. I think a nice humorous element.
Yeah.
Especially with Andrew's sense of humour.
Yeah.
We come to a shocking part of the 10cc story now, for those of us who are from Stockport. And from about 1974 onwards, if you look through the music press, you start to see stories, first of all, of Strawberry being too booked up for you to actually get any time in it. Yeah. But also tales that Eric, Kevin and Lol are looking to move south.
That's right.
Which obviously led to the development eventually of a new Strawberry studio, Strawberry South.
Yep.
You stayed, I'd like to think, in the north.
I did.
And what were your thoughts, though, at the time of this kind of move away for the three of you?
Well, it's a free country and you can move where you want. What it did do was require another studio to be built, which we did. And Kevin Lowell immediately left the band.
So they started off as being partners in that studio.
Yes, and but they decided. I mean, building up during the making of the How Dare You album, I could feel the clouds on the horizon. And it happens, you know. But the studio, although we lost a lot of money. But it did produce two very big hits.
It did.
And some very good records. So I don't sort of regret it, but it meant that I had to spend a lot of time travelling, going down to Strawberry South, and renting a house in London. But one thing it did do was there was on the drive to London, I used to pass this sign that said Deceptive Bends. And I thought that's an interesting, very subtle thing for the Ministry of Transport to say. Deceptive, not dangerous. Anyway, as you may know, it became the title of the first album that Eric and I made with Paul Burgess, by the way, the drummer.
Yeah.
The first album that we made without Kevin and Lol.
So Kevin and Lol left 10cc in 76 because they had developed the Gizmo.
There are a few reasons. The Gizmo was one of them. I think also, I have a very close relationship with Kevin. We've talked about what we should have done, how it could have been different, but there you go. I think Kevin and Lol got fed up with the cycle of it was getting too much of the norm, just writing, recording, rehearsing, going on the road. Whereas to me and Eric, it was fantastic. It was what we wanted to do. And they wanted to do other things.
Yeah. One of which was the Gizmo.
Yeah.
Which was used kind of sparingly on 10cc's records up to 76, and then they went and recorded Consequences.
Well, it was used actually quite a bit. I mean, you can really hear it as well. I've got one and have used it as well. And when it works, it's fantastic. But a lot of the time it doesn't.
As Kevin Lol found out.
Yeah, as I found out, yeah.
So just one last thing on the original 10cc. George Tremlett published a book.
Yeah.
Which came out in 1976, just as the band was splitting, which probably didn't do it much favour, really. But one of the things that George Tremlett talks about, which as a result of the split looks kind of a little bit dated, was Lol talked about the truth sessions that you had, and you mentioned them earlier, how you could not argue, but you could debate, and you could say this would sound better if. And I think there's a quote in the book where Lol says, there's no problem that would be so great that a truth session couldn't sort it out. And then as soon as the book came out, the band had split in half. But,
I know, it's ironic. But it was kind of very American, really, wasn't it? You know, in its way. But it was a very, as I said before, we had a very good work ethic. And if someone felt like you're not pulling your weight, or, you know, you shouldn't be late, or there were a few things that we had issues with, as you would imagine, with any tightly knit group.
So Eric, Kevin and Lol moved south. Strawberry South was built. You still remained in the north and used Strawberry North quite a lot still.
Yeah.
If you look in the tapes we've got, there's lots of demos that you would have done there. We've got one booking diary from 1980, which I think Christmas week shows your name booked out across the whole week. So you were still using Strawberry North. You even brought Joey Ramone to Stockport.
I did.
And
that was something.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got a call from the Ramones agents or manager to say, would you like to produce the Ramones? I'd never heard anything so ridiculous, really. But I'm a bit of I was kind of intrigued by it. Well, what have the Ramones got in common with me, or anything that maybe even 10cc do? What it was all, I think, to do with the British invasion. They loved all the bands that came over in the 60s, like the Beatles, Freddie and the Dreamers, Herman's Hermits, loads of Dave Clark 5. And they thought that their songwriting was similar to mine. Now, I can't think of anything more different than Bus Stop and, you know, Sheena is a punk rocker. But anyway, I said, this is odd, but you never know, let's give it a try. So the idea was that I go to New York and I said, let's do like 2 or 3 tracks, see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, we can say thank you very much and not waste each other's time. Well, it went really well. So we did all the backing tracks in New York, and I said, I'd really like to bring Joey over to Strawberry North to do the vocals. And he came over, and he was charming. He was not what you would think at all. By the way, the whole band, there were very always on time for the sessions. And Joe in particular was quite sort of finicky as well about, he was always say, he'd go like, he'd sort of curl his head, go, Graham, can I do that again? And he kept saying, can I do it again? And I'd let him do it again, right up to the time we were mastering the album, and he said, can I do it again? I said, no. that was it. But he was lovely, and wherever we used to go to various restaurants, and people when he went, people used to say, like the guys that work, or people that worked in restaurants, like, where's your friend? Where's your friend Joey? We like him. He had something about him.
And having said 10cc moved away to Strawberry South, you did return to Stockport for one last album in 1982-83, Windows in the Jungle.
Yeah.
Where you came back and had Steve Gadd, I think, drumming.
We did.
Was it quite nice to come back to Strawberry North?
Yeah.
Had it changed at all, or was it vaguely as you remembered it?
I think it was vaguely as I remember it. It was great to have Steve Gadd playing. I think we had Simon Phillips as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have to say that the sort of magic had gone somewhat. Well, not somewhat, had gone. But we were like very, eternally optimistic. But really, we wanted to change. And we did actually ask, you mentioned Andrew Gold before, ask Andrew to join the band. We thought it would be really good. And he would have been perfect, actually. But at that point, he had a fear of flying and didn't want to do it. But I eventually ended up working with him for a long period of time. And one of my happiest artistic relationships was with Andrew.
And produced hit records as well. So Bridge to Your Heart.
Yeah, Bridge to Your Heart and Right Between the Eyes, and other stuff that not many people know, but I think it's great.
And unfortunately, Strawberry closed down in 1993.
Yeah.
Peter had sold up in 1986. It was taken over by Nick Turnbull, who worked for Granada Television.
Yeah.
But you look back at Strawberry's legacy. Sid Lawrence must have recorded about 20 different albums there.
Yeah.
Barclay James Harvest, of course, 10cc. Granada Television, who in those days when you couldn't just go on lift off and mime to records, you had to go into recording studios and do some elements of pre-recording. So Granada used Strawberry a lot. Factory Records, Martin Hannett, Tony Wilson, Joy Division, The Smiths, a whole generation of Manchester musicians after 1976. The legacy of Strawberry is quite amazing.
It is.
How you view it now, looking back.
Well, going to the seeing the exhibition just now and listening to that list of artists that have recorded there, I think it really, without knowing it, sort of changed the face of British music.
Definitely.
It was a massive influence, and of course, a lot of those records wouldn't have existed without the studio. They might have done, but we know that they did because of the studio. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to read another quote to you. This is from a great magazine called Let It Rock, 1973. And it starts off by saying, "Once upon a time, Manchester was best known to the pop rock world as a big town about 30 miles east of Liverpool, a population of 1 million and not one potential John Lennon or Mick Jagger among them, although the same river that watered the talent of Liverpool flowed through Manchester. But the story of 10cc and Strawberry Studios is really the story of pop in Manchester from the 60s until today," and that was 73. "Lol, Kevin, Graham and Eric, who are 10cc and Strawberry Studios, all insist that what they are doing now is the most personally significant thing they have ever done." And I like that because it does actually say that what you did, what Peter did in Strawberry, was actually creating something in Manchester that had a legacy to it as well. That
It's important. It was important.
It got lost, I think. in the 70s when maybe the music was changing and different, but that northern spirit was still there.
Yeah.
And I think what you were doing as 10cc and with Peter in Strawberry, all the things you did in Strawberry, if you like, allowed Manchester music to carry on then and afterwards as well. So
Yeah, no doubt.
I think it's your contribution, Peter's contribution, I think, to Manchester music, to British music, I think has been underplayed for too long and should be trumpeted. And this is partly
Let's shout it out.
Yeah, absolutely, let's shout it out.
Yeah.
So, that's my questions all done. So we're now going to throw it open to the audience. I've already asked you 10cc name question, so you can't do that one. And I want Graham to go away thinking to himself, what an articulate and intelligent lot of people. So you're going to astound him. Would anybody like to ask Graham a question? I'm going to let Catherine decide where she goes with the microphone. I'm not going to choose.
I would like to ask you about the control room in Strawberry.
Okay.
Just by coincidence, about 5 days ago, I walked past, and I must admit I'm quite a novice when it comes to the history of the place. But I went to the museum myself afterwards and had a look around.
Right.
It said about there being a certain type of stone in there that maybe absorbed
a what?
sound, a certain type of stone.
A
The
stone
wall, the stone wall, when it was redone by Westlake.
Oh,
They put the stone
yes,
wall
right.
up in the
Yes,
control room.
yes.
So
That's
I'm just
true.
wondering what your opinion is on that, whether it helped.
I had no opinion whatsoever on it. I couldn't care less. But it kind of doesn't matter to me. No, whatever it, as I said before, as far as equipment and the technical side of things, I'll leave that to people that know better than me. But the fact that if a stone wall was going to make the records, everything sound better, or was helping for a clearer sound or whatever it was, then it's fine by me.
Tom Hidley said it obviously helped. So if Tom said it, then
Yeah.
we'd like to think
it worked.
Right.
So I'm glad for that.
I've got one there.
Yes, sir.
Do a test of memory here.
Hang on, let's have the mic first, Peter.
Hi, Mike. First time we came to Intercity
Yeah.
to do so, I think it was doing some master tapes for some demos, and he had a car he parked in the back round the corner. Can you remember what the car was?
What the
Your
car
car.
was?
Your
Well, it's going to be an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
And if it was white,
Yeah.
it was an Aston Martin Volante,
Yeah.
PBA 552,
Brilliant.
something like that. Yeah.
Oh, well done.
Sadly, that and lots of other guitars I haven't got anymore.
Right.
But
You know what I said? Do you remember what I said to you going on this? I said, bloody hell, Graham. I said, there must be something good in the songwriting business.
Yes,
Martin.
yeah.
Never forget that.
yeah,
And he drove off. I thought,
Yeah.
I'm going to get one. I never did.
yeah.
Got Porsche instead. So
Yeah,
bad.
I think we yes, in the back. I think there's a picture actually in the parking lot at Strawberry. There's like 2 or 3 of them, Astons. Yeah. Happy days.
Happy days. Wish us to have it.
Any other questions? Raise your hands if you have a question.
You asked me earlier what the question would be. Graham, I've been a fan of 10cc since the age of 4. My
Wow.
uncle introduced me with 10cc, the original, the first album.
Yeah,
And from that moment, something clicked in my head. And since then, there hasn't been a day where I haven't listened to a 10cc track of some sort, as well as Wax and everything else that you've done.
right.
Back then, did you actually think that you would have so much impact on people's lives like me?
You don't realise
And
it.
Gillian, I might add.
Yeah. Well, you don't actually think of it. You're just doing what you do. I mean, really, I always think that like with songwriting, people say, it's so clever, how do you do it? It's like this. It's not clever, it's a gift. You've either got it or you ain't. You can't be taught it. And sometimes what you like, you obviously like. And when I'm writing something and I'm moved by it, I have to be moved by it in some way, whether it's happy or sad or whatever it is, to carry on finishing the song. The song has to have its own legs, I call it, you know. It touches me. If you feel half of what I've felt, then job done. In fact, one thing that I always say is, particularly with I'm Not in Love, It Happens With, and there's a couple of other songs, a song I wrote with Andrew Gold, Ready to Go Home, you probably know that. But people come up after a show and say, I was absolutely in tears. And I go, job done. I've made you feel what I felt. That is incredible.
I have to admit, like last Saturday when we was in Berlin, for me, it's very surreal that I was sort of like transported back to 4 years old, listening
Yeah.
to the Dean and I and Donna.
Yeah.
And it's like time travel.
I know the power of music. One thing can I just say? I toured with Ringo Starr and the All Star Band. I did 2 big tours with him, and I remember one evening in particular we were playing away, and there was a woman right in front of in the first few rows, and I looked at her. I thought, wow, you're old enough to be my grandmother, which is ridiculous because of my age. But anyway, it looked like a grandmother. As Ringo was singing, a 16-year-old girl appeared. That was how fantastic it was. And that's what music does. Of course, it takes you to places and you can hear, I can hear 2 notes from a certain song, I've gone. I don't need anything more than that. It's like...
And if you remember what I said to you in Hest quite a few years ago when we bumped into each other in the foyer,
yeah.
when I was getting Nicola's coffee for her, you said to me, what are you doing there? And I said, well, there's this little band playing across the road. And if you remember, I said to you, if you were doing a gig on Mars, I'll be trying to get a gig on NASA to get to it. So, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I ask about the one of the qualities I've always thought about 10cc was the lyrics.
Yeah.
To so many of the songs, and I think much underrated, frankly, by music press in general. Going back to the first album, our friend there just mentioned a song called The Dean and I.
Yes.
And there was a line in that about who would have guessed Milton's Paradise
Lost could be found.
And I remember at a much younger age thinking, wow, to wind
Who would have
that
guessed me? Yeah.
into a song.
That's
is
Kevin and Lowell,
absolutely
and
brilliant.
yeah.
But you must have your own favourites in terms of the best, cleverest lyrics. And I'm just interested to know if there's perhaps 1 or 2 that spring to mind.
Well, there was a song that I wrote with Kevin called Iceberg. Do you know that song? It's got the weirdest sort of lyric. And I liked it because it's, I'm not going to quote any of it, but sometimes a lyric is kind of, when you read it, it's nonsensical. But there's something, the main thing about a lyric is that it marries with the music, that you can't imagine the lyric or the music. Like you can't imagine, I'm not in love, in any other way. It's just like they go together. I've lost my train of thought. The main thing was, the reason why that happened was we were writing songs for ourselves, not for you. You happened to like them. That was great. But we never, whether in any combination of when we were writing, although that is a Kevin Godley Lowell Cream song, we were never thinking of, well, this won't get on the radio, it's too long, or it's too this, or it's too that, or everybody's using this sort of rhythm now. We never bothered with that. We just did everything for ourselves. One lyric that I like, which I actually came up with, that's been very good for us is, I don't like cricket. I love it. Well, I say I came up with it. Somebody said it to me. but I was clever enough to steal it. But that's what a songwriter does. I mean, I'm not joking. I'm hearing things all the time, and my songwriter's radar is going, oh, that's interesting. Or you might mishear something as well.
Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Graham, as a songwriter, you were saying before about the technology you weren't sort of into, more of the musicianship. Since Strawberry's days, technology's moved on a great deal to the point now where the Beatles have just released this new track based on John Lennon's lyrics from way back and so on and so forth. There's also the bit that technology's on the verge of going too far and using AI by listening to tracks from artists that can then, through whatever programs, create a new sound.
Yeah, extract certain elements of it. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because, you know, who owns the copyright? Who's the creator?
Well, as long as all the artists or writers that contributed to that track get paid a royalty, but it'd probably be an infinitesimal amount because it'd probably be like 500 writers. The only thing I'm worried about is that one day I'm going to hear a song that I'm going to tell all my friends and everybody about and say, this is fantastic, and find out it was created by AI. That's what worries me. But I don't think that day is going to come. Not in my lifetime, I don't think. I think if you know about the creative process, about what happens and the twists and turns you make in your head, it's not linear. You know, you get to a part in a song and you go, I need to change this, I need to do this or that. It's where you go. I'm not sure that AI is ever going to be able to do it. But it has got advantages, like that Beatles record wouldn't have existed without the technology to extract John Lennon's voice and separate it from the piano. It's phenomenal. There you go. So, did I answer your question? Okay.
You had your turn, Peter. Let's just see if there's anyone else.
He's allowed, isn't he?
Eventually, yeah. Go on, we've got one more over there, I think.
Hiya, Graham. One of my most favourite songwriters, producers, Brian Wilson.
Brian Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, and my favourite ever song is God Only Knows.
Yes, good choice.
What song do you wish you'd written and produced?
That is a really hard question. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Webb, and he wrote a song called Wichita Lineman, which is just phenomenal because it's so romantic. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. It's like, wow. And so I wouldn't have minded writing that, but I wouldn't have minded writing God Only Knows or a billion others, honestly. I mean, I hear things and I mean, there's so many. What can I say?
Hi, Graham.
Hi.
I don't know whether you've seen in the press over the past couple of days about Hall & Oates, how Hall has put a restraining order on Oates.
Hall has put a restraining order on Oates.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to Scotch porridge Oates?
What I was going to say is, regarding any of your past collaborators, is there anybody you would wish to put a restraining order on?
Yes.
I'm going to say the next question is who?
I'm not saying that.
Graham, I just wondered, in relation to you as an individual songwriter before you were in 10cc, and also in relation to 10cc, which songs individually and in the band have produced the most checks coming through your door in relation to royalties? And, sorry, another thing.
We get
were all 10cc songs Did you decide at the beginning that everybody owned the songs?
No. As I said before, we took ownership of them sort of emotionally, and in the way that we were going to produce it and perform it. But with 10cc, whoever wrote the song got the royalties.
What's your most successful song as a songwriter outside 10cc?
I'm Not in Love is definitely up there. Things We Do for Love with 10cc. No Milk Today and Bus Stop are very high up in the
Right, thank you.
returns. Yeah.
Hi, Graham.
Hi.
When I've seen you a few times doing Heart Full of Songs,
Oh,
your
right.
acoustic set, some of those songs, I've got to admit, I didn't know them before I heard you singing them acoustically. Do you ever do that set and afterwards think, well, that was even better than the Yardbirds or the Turbits? Because I love the way you do it acoustically, and I play it quite a lot in the car.
I think what happens is that when you hear the writer sing the songs, or if whether he's written it or co-written it, it gives it an extra element. Like I remember going to see the late, great Burt Bacharach. He wasn't a very good singer, but when he did do it, there was something so charming and lovely about it, because you're listening to the source of the melody. I think that adds a certain element to it. But I never think to myself, I'm doing this much better than the Hollies or anything. I never think that. I'm just grateful to them, for doing it in the first place.
Have we got any more questions?
I think Peter had one.
It was when you mentioned AI. When you mentioned AI, do you think when we started, we were on analogue?
Yeah.
Do you think that's much better than digital?
Well, the thing is, now, of course, yes, Peter's talking about analog recording, which was on tape, to digital recording. I actually like analog because it's warmer. And actually in the studio now, we do everything digitally because it's so bloody convenient. I can't tell you how great it is, but we put it back through tape. So it sounds like it's come through tape. So, because to make it warm, it's just more natural sounding.
It is, quite agree with you.
Yeah, but I have to say that digital recording is so
quicker.
And also, during the pandemic, I've got a studio at home now. If I was dealing with 24-track and Dolbys, forget it. But we use GarageBand, which is like a very simple Apple recording studio within the computer. And I can manage it quite well. And it's because it's digital, it's very easy to do. But what I was going to say was with the pandemic, recording with other people, we can send files to each other. And that has been a boon. I'm recording a new album now. And I wrote a song in Nashville with two of my fellow writers. And Beth Nielsen Chapman is a great singer and also a guitarist. And Gordon Kennedy is an absolutely brilliant guitar player. We wrote the song, I sent them the basic track, and they've sent the files, and we've added their guitars and voices and everything. And we wouldn't normally have been able to do that.
Yeah, it's got its
It has its upside as well.
There was a lot of fun doing on analog, wasn't it?
Pardon?
It was a lot more fun.
A lot more fun,
you had to make up sounds. Today you can just...
That's a very important point you've made. Now we can say, how are we going to get the sound of a church bell? Well, what we would have done, we would have gone to a church and rung the bell. Right, but now you can just get a sample of it. Well, where's the fun in that?
Absolutely.
We could have gone to St George's.
We're both old school, aren't we, really? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is that a question right at the back? You got to run all the way to the back now. He did that deliberately, I think. Final question.
Hi, Graham.
Hi.
It's a two-part question, really. Firstly, are there any contemporary artists that you would like to record or co-write with? And secondly, any contemporary artists you'd like to record their songs and vice versa, they'd like to sing yours?
Yeah, I can't really I'm trying to think of somebody who I would like to write with. I mean, there are people I'd like to work with, but they're not sort of contemporary. I mean, people like Martin Offler, I've always been a big fan of. I'd love to do something with him. And I admire people like, there's a singer called Madison Cunningham, an American singer that I like. Billie Eilish as well, who you will know. I think she puts out some great stuff. So the answer is probably, without thinking too deeply about it, I think the answer is probably no. But I would like the opportunity to, if it came along. I'm always interested in trying new stuff. And when you go into particularly in a writing partnership, you never know what's going to happen. It very rarely happens that nothing happens. But I've been with people that there's just no, it's like any relationship, there's no chemistry. But with other people, it's like, wow, this is fantastic.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think Graham is going to think you are all very intelligent and articulate.
Absolutely.
Maybe apart from Peter down the front there. But, so we are, in a moment, Graham is going to round off this evening with one final song.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Before, as Graham sets himself up, I think we should say another thank you to him for coming back home to Stockport. So, Graham, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to say, we've only had snippets of Graham's musical skills tonight, but if you want to hear more, and you should, in March, Graham is taking 10cc out on the road around Britain, at least 18 dates that I'm aware of, including the Bridgewater Hall on March the 19th. You can book online, and I would urge you to go and see Graham performing with 10cc because they are absolutely superb. And as a taster for that, I'm going to hand over to Graham now to finish off our evening to perform a song of his choice.
Okay, well, it seems there's only one song I can sing that was written in Stockport or the environs of and recorded at Strawberry Studios. I'm going to sing it in a different key to the original, but I think this song says it all.
So don't forget it. It's just a silly phase I'm going through. So if I call you, don't make a fuss. Don't tell your friends about the two of us. I'm not in love, no, no. But then again, that doesn't mean you mean that much to me. So if I call you, don't make a fuss. Don't tell your friends about the two of us. I'm not in love, no, no. That's lying there. So don't you ask me to give it back. I know you know it doesn't mean that much to me. I'm not in love, I'm not in love.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Graham Gouldman, and thank you all for coming. I know you'll all be going to watch 10cc live in March, and maybe we'll get Graham back again to come. Now he knows that Stockport is a friendly, hospitable place. He'll be back again to tell us more tales, but thank you, Graham, so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.